Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our September 2020 edition of our third Tuesday at 3 webcast series, Getting Back to What Comes Next. My name is Alan Falcon. I'm the CEO and our pragmatic cloud evangelist here at Cumulus Global, and I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day, your busy week, whether you're working on site or working remotely, to join us here this afternoon live, or to watch and listen as a recording on demand from our resource library. Before we get started, just a reminder that the audio is muted to avoid any unnecessary background noise and disruption. So if at any point in time you have a question or a comment, feel free to click and open the questions window. There's an icon along the top or right-hand side of your screen to do just that. And we do have time for Q&A at the end of the session, although we'll try and take questions as they come up during the presentation as well. As with all of our webcasts, the session is being recorded. It will be posted typically within 24 hours in our resource center. Please feel free to share. We will send out a note with the link to the recording, and if we have some good follow-up information, we'll share that as well. Our third Tuesday at 3 webcasts are one of our mechanisms for of events and resources we provide to our customers and our broader cloud computing and small business communities in general. We have a number of coffee and cloud webcasts on demand as well. These are shorter in nature and a little more specific in topic. The three most popular right now and probably the most timely are safe and secure work from home and successfully working in teams in G Suite, and a separate one specific to Office and Microsoft 365. Those webcasts only run about 20 minutes. They're a quick hit of a lot of information. And if you do go online, register, and view those webcasts, you have the option of selecting a Starbucks or a Dunkin' coffee gift card. So it's Coffee and Clouds, and the coffee's on us. A reminder that on our homepage, we have a number of business and technology resources related to COVID-19. Things have been pretty stable the last couple months as we've been waiting to see if and when the next any sort of additional recovery package will be coming out of the federal government. And as states have begun opening up, but there's still some valuable tools, ideas, and resources there. And at any time you want to contact us, info@Cumulus Global, we'll see it and we'll answer and we'll get right back to you. So with the pleasantries out of the way, let's dive into the topic at hand this afternoon. So since February, March, when it became clear that COVID was going to have a pretty significant impact on our world, we've been going through a lot of change. And so I thought I'd start off today and step back and talk, and using the Kubler-Ross model for change, sort of look at where we've been and where we are and why that at this point in time, as we look at sort of getting back to what comes next, whenever that normal is going to look like, and however long it might take to get there, an understanding of where we are now will help us talk about the assessment we should be doing and strategic and tactical decisions we may want to make as we continue to move forward. So as you know, back in February, March of this year, COVID-19 cases and rates started exploding in many places in the country. There were pretty dramatic shutdowns of the economy and of businesses, school systems, office buildings, public buildings, etc. And so work from home became somewhat of a necessity, even for people who normally don't work remotely or out of the office at all. And this rapid adaptation, sometimes businesses only had a day or two or three to make those changes, really led to a mad scramble, both in human resources terms as well as the technology pieces, with a real emphasis on getting remote working and work from home to work now in some form or fashion, so that businesses could, hopefully survive, and if not thrive, they'd still be around and able to function and meet their obligations, service their customers, work with their vendors, etc. And really, what started, at that point, even with the shock and sort of the surprise at how quickly we went from, this might not be a big thing to this is a major thing, really, triggered an uncertain outlook. Because by that time, end of February and really more into March, the initial thought was, okay, this is, a virus. Look at what's happened in some other countries. It might be a 2 to 3 month curve where it gets really bad, it gets better. But even by mid-March, it was clear that in some parts of the world, the curve wasn't flattening. and the situation was more difficult to get under control. And so while there was optimism that this could be a 2 to maybe 4 month incident and blip in the economy, there was still some lingering concern and uncertainty about how long this might last. What did come out of it early on, at least, is that for most of us, this really, created a creative alignment, right? We're all in this together. We're all impacted by this. Your business, my business, your employees, my employees, your customers, my customers, your vendors, my vendors, all in this together, and all knowing that we're making the same adaptations. So a lot of congeniality, a lot of forgiveness in many cases, as some of us may have struggled to service clients and keep things moving forward as we went through the adaptation. Step forward into that March, April timeframe. This is where some of the frustration started to kick in. I mean, really, it became more obvious this might not only be a couple of months. And so all these temporary changes we made to running our business, really, how long is that going to last? And this really drove an effort to maximize communications, not just with our employees, but with our vendors, our customers, our partners. For many businesses, this is when we started to see real financial impacts. And maybe you have, maybe you haven't, hopefully you haven't, but many of our customers and many of other businesses we've worked with and hope to work with definitely had some, and really by industry, some very wide variety of financial impact. And so a lot of focus on communication, heads up to employees. Is your job secure? Are there layoffs? Is it hour reduction, wage reductions? Vendors on payment schedules, cash flow issues, working with customers to assess demand, near-term and long-term collections. What's their financial situation? Are they going to be able to pay for the services? Is there something we could do as their service provider to help them and to help ease their pain without putting ourselves at risk, and other business partners and organizations we work with as well? And so really, with that effort to maximize communication, really really falls, let's understand where we're all at. Let's share where we're at. Let's work, we're still in this together from that creative alignment, and let's figure out how we jointly can move forward. As a company ourselves, we did a significant outreach to all of our customers just to check in, see how they were doing, what assistance they might need. As we have, customers every month coming up for renewal on their services with us, we've been reaching out. We've been asking about their situation, the impacts they're having. In many cases, we've initiated discussions on options they have to lower their monthly or annual operating cost and to realign their services to the changing needs of their business in a way that doesn't just save them time, it'll save them money. And so April, there was a lot about information sharing, as I said. Part of that was when we as a company started, continuing our effort to share not only technology ideas, but information about the recovery programs, the PPP program, sharing resources, webcasts, forums, articles that we thought would help you as business owners move it. So that's just, our example of how we did it. We see that with many of our customers and our vendor partners as well, doing that effort to maximize communication and really understand and share. And of course, that led to a little bit, I don't know if fatigue or depression is the right word, but clearly as we headed into May and June, as schools weren't reopening and school years were finishing remote in whatever form that took, in some areas of the country better than others, it was clear that this was not going to be a quick cycle. We're all, switching, for most businesses, switching to online interaction with customers and employees. We started talking about Zoom fatigue, is a term, term de guerre, if you will. And realizing that in many respects it had gotten harder to do our jobs as individuals and as teams, and more businesses started seeing a business impact. Now, clearly, the business impact of COVID-19 varies greatly by industry and market and geography, but I don't think there's any business hasn't had some impact of varying degrees, positive or negative, since this May, June, during that May, June, or since this May, June timeframe. The other thing that sort of came to the realization was that all of the CARES Act and the other recovery acts that have been passed were all based on that initial assumption that this was going to be 2 to 4 or a 3 to 5 month cycle, and then things would be pretty much back to normal. And so the crisis and the need for economic support and business support was a one-time temporary thing. As we headed into May and June, it was more clear that this was not a quick cycle. We started realizing that the structure of the relief that was provided was not in line with the financial and market needs for most small and mid-sized companies. And so for many of us, for many of you, really that became motivation. That motivation was sparked with the realization that it was time to pivot. We have customers and businesses we've worked with who've redefined their services. We've had companies that have, in many cases, stopped what they were doing and entered a new line of business that's very COVID specific. In a number of cases, we've seen that done very successfully. We've seen the way businesses we work with and some of our customers have changed their business model and the way they interact with their customers in a way that might forego some modicum of profitability for long-term relationship and stability and cash flow. We certainly see pivoting in how companies use their banking relationships and debt service. But we also see this happening in May and June when people are saying, okay, we scrambled, we separated out, we're working from home and remotely. It's a challenge. There's fatigue involved. So even as we pivot, we're trying to pivot at a time when our energy level might be low and our motivation might, at this point, might be suffering a little bit. And then we sort of hit July and August. And here where I think, the Kubler-Ross model talks about experiment, where we really start getting serious about our initial engagement with the new situation and really focus as an action on developing capability. And this is where I think we realize that we're settling in for the long term, right? So even as economies and regionally started to open up, we saw this and we continue to see this in fits and starts, right? Where open up or maybe didn't shut down maybe enough early. Is it a second wave or is the first wave not over? All of those conversations. Certainly in many areas of the country, as the economy's opened up, it's had to be shut down. The geographic nature of this isn't just necessarily where your business is or where your offices are, but where your customers are, where they work, and also where they live. We see this in California, that different parts of the state are in different areas of stay at home or safer at home or lockdown orders, based on a more regionalized approach. Here in Massachusetts, we were opening up. There was a small surge. To nip it in the bud, they froze the progression of the opening up process. And we're now at what our state calls phase 3, stage 1 indefinitely. And it's unclear even what the metrics would be at this point for moving on to stage 2 of phase 3 and eventually phase 4. What we also realized is that the political climate is such that there are no white knights, that, all of the relief packages for small, mid-sized companies were really designed with the expectation that this would be ending in the July-August timeframe. It's not. There's not the political will or ability, however you view it, to compromise and come up with longer-term relief or additional relief packages, at least at this point in time as we sit here today on Tuesday, September 15th. And so for us as business owners, it really comes into, what is working, what's working within our businesses, what is not. And again, starting to think about all these changes we've made to our businesses. Most of them were done hastily for many companies out of necessity, not for any lack of planning or diligence. But in haste, as the cliche says, in haste comes waste, to paraphrase that cliche. And so really now when we talk about developing our capability, taking opportunity out of where we are and looking for that silver lining, many businesses are looking at updating their processes and how they do their work, knowing that how their teams are located and working together is different, and really asking the question, is there a better use of IT? In the micro level, saying, hey, is there a better use of IT? I scramble to get people to work remotely. It's going okay, but it's not great, or it's maybe it's hurt productivity noticeably. How can we be doing it better because we're settling in for the long term here? And when we talk about long-term, I'm not talking about long-term full remote. I'm talking about long-term adaptation wherever you are. For us as a company, our offices are open within state guidelines. So some people are in the office, some are working remotely. Some people have different schedules of when they're working from home or working in the office. We have to manage our capacity, and people have to manage their personal lives. As schools are opening with some degree of remote, on-site, or hybrid models, that puts additional demands on my employees, on your employees. And so, developing a capability to run seamlessly, regardless of employee location and how your teams are structured and where they're working from, is an important part, and that's both process and better use of IT. So here we are in September and looking forward as well. We're really at the decision point where it's time to start. As we've been thinking about developing our capability, maybe we've made changes, maybe we haven't, but now would be the time how to really learn how to work in the new situation, to be able to feel positive about where we are, what we're doing, and to integrate those changes going forward. And so what we know right now is that for most companies we work with, not all, but for most companies we work with, most of the temporary fixes that were put in place so people could work from home or be remote are not efficient. Their impacts to those decisions, they were acceptable when it was temporary. Now that we're settling in for some long-term uncertainty about on-site versus remote and even the nature of work, we're starting to hear concerns and see concerns and feel concerns. We expect, is normal 6 months away? Is it 12 months? Is it 18 months away? And what changes should we continue to anticipate as far as openings, closings of the economy, globally, nationally, statewide, regionally, changes in the business market, changes in the economy? Are we in a true recession? Is it just an incident-related recession? Is it going to become a depression? Is it going to get better, worse? All of these unanswered questions. The uncertainty we're dealing with is different now than it was back when this started in February, March, but we're still dealing with a high level of uncertainty and anxiety. And so we talk about sharing the knowledge and taking the capabilities we can develop and bringing them forward into integration. Now's the time to step back, assess, adapt, really it should say readapt, and move forward. And so with that in mind, and sort of looking at that change cycle, let me talk about the process of self-assessment. And for us, we always like to start with the question, what's your desired business outcome, right? What are you trying to achieve in your business? Now, we're working with companies who their desire is, to be able to maintain enough cash flow to survive. We have other businesses, we have a few businesses for whom the pandemic is an opportunity to grow. We have other businesses that are comfortable, they're going to be able to hold their own, and they see opportunities that were out of their price range, maybe in their ability to pursue at this point in time. So we talk about doing the self-assessment of where you're at, that step back. Start with how has your business changed, and not just from a revenue and a profitability standpoint, but think about how it's changed for your employees, your customers, your vendors, your other partners that you work with. So it's an internal and it's an external view. And for each of those, your employers, your customers, your vendors, your partners, understand and assess their health, right? So employees, there's physical health, as well as the mental health and social well-being. What needs do they have, and what are their priorities? Because you might find that your customers' needs and priorities are different based on their health. Same thing with your vendors, and same thing with other partners you work with. And when we talk about sort of that, how's it changed? A lot of people are focused on revenues. We take a broader look. It's your revenues might be good, but your margins might be down. We've worked with some businesses who their revenues are down, but their margins are up. Their cost of goods sold has changed, not only because of the pandemic, but some of the other politic, and tariff things that have been happening. What's your expense look like? How's your ROI if you're in the, if you've done some investment and we're expecting a return, where's that? How are you for capitalization and working capital, operating capital, or growth capital? And what's been the impact of the relief? Did you take a PPP? Was it sufficient? Are you confident, given your numbers over the 8-week or 24-week recovery period, that you'll get forgiveness? And do you understand what that means? So a lot of changes to our business. Take a holistic look, internal, external. And again, that triad of health, needs, and priorities sort of lets you know where people are and what they believe their needs are and how they're going to address those needs comes through in the priorities. Then take a step back and, what did we change as a business, right? What did we change in terms of our products and services? What technology changes did we make? And have we made any changes to our operating policies, processes, and procedures to accommodate the change in the way we're working, the change in products and services, and the change in technologies? And then the question is, how is it working? And in all honesty, 95 times out of 100, when we're talking to our customers and prospective customers about how are things working, what we get is it's good, it's okay. And my question to you is, okay good enough? Is okay good enough to survive? Is it okay good enough to thrive? Is okay good enough to relieve some of the stress and anxiety about the situation we're currently operating within? And if the answer, is that okay isn't good enough, then let's look about taking this assessment to heart and making some changes. And so what are some of the changes we've made, the methods we've used to adapt, what issues do those create, and what are solutions and impacts of those solutions that we can look forward to? And before I get into it, we do have a question, which is, will there be a recording available? Yes, we'll have a recording video with the slides available on our website, hopefully by this time tomorrow afternoon. And if you'd like a copy of the slides to be available in PDF, I'm happy to share those as well, and we'll send those out. So with that question answered, let's start looking at some of the things we've changed. Well, first and foremost, when people think about adaptation due to COVID-19, we think about remote access, people working from home or working from someplace else. And the most common methods that we see, and this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, is virtual private network or VPN, so that you can connect from wherever you are into the existing network at your company. A remote PC, which is a tool like Go to My PC, where you're connecting one PC directly to another that's on that internal network and behind your secure firewall. File sync and share services. We've seen, we saw a dramatic spike in the use of tools like Dropbox and Box.net, as well as people doing local copies where they said, hey, before I go home to work, I'm just going to download everything from my space on the server to my laptop and take it with me. Or from home, they're connecting in, downloading files, working on them, and when they're done, uploading them. Now, the methods that are being employed also really depend on the nature of the employee and their job function, right? So for outside salespeople, for field service people, for employees and team members who've already worked remotely on a regular basis, on a part-time or full-time basis, chances are they have tools in place and the methods in place that they're familiar with to work remotely. Really where this impact hit the hardest is jobs that were always considered to be on site, where if employees couldn't work on site, then they were not working that day. And that can be everyone from administrative staff to inside sales to marketing teams, customer service teams, things of that nature. And so what are the issues that come with all of this remote access changes? And it really is the acronym PARCS. It impacts negatively performance, availability, reliability, cost, and security. Performance, because VPN, remote PC, file sync and share services, and local copies all slow things down, whether it's the overhead and the slowness of VPN connections or remote PC, or the fact that you have to go out of the tools you're using into different tools in order to save and share information. Because of the complexities around remote PC and VPN, we know that connectivity is an issue, potentially if, especially if internet service isn't great. And so you end up with availability issues, higher support costs, more IT issues that need to be resolved on an individual user basis. And people see that in the reliability as well. A negative impact on cost. For most organizations, when they jumped out to add VPN, they might have had to increase VPN licensing for their site or buy that remote PC software, or people if they're not using the consumer version of Dropbox, they're paying for the business edition. And of course, security, if you're now moving files out of your protected environment onto individual PCs and laptops, which may or may not be company owned, there's security issues around that as well. And so what are the solutions to this as we look forward and want to do better, right? One is to take advantage. Most small, mid-sized companies we work with are on or thinking about the G Suite or Microsoft 365 productivity suites. And so with G Suite, you've got shared drives and drive file stream. This lets you create a managed cloud file service that looks and feels like it's on a local disk or local file server, but it's really up in the cloud. Access from on-site is the same as access from remote. It's secure, it's encrypted. You don't need the VPN service or the PC to PC. You don't need a sync and share service. You have access to your data there as well. And you do it without filling up or overloading your laptop or your home desktop or home computer. The same is true in the Microsoft 365 Office 365 environment with a combination of OneDrive, SharePoint file services, and the OneDrive client. So that's one option. Another option that we've seen being very effective for companies that have large amounts of data on site and aren't prepared to move fully cloud is we've got tools and solutions that let you create a cloud mirror of on-premise file systems. And so your file server stays where it is. A mirror image is created and synced in real time with a cloud service that people can access from on-site or at home. Again, it's secure, it's encrypted, and you do not need the VPN or remote PC services that hurt performance, availability, and reliability. And finally, if your remote access is more than just files to use with local applications, you need access to applications running internally, then having a remote desktop or virtual desktop infrastructure as a cloud-hosted service provides it. And the impact of moving to these types of solutions, and again, which solutions you need and the mix of solutions will depend on your specific case, and we'll talk about that towards the end of the session here today, how to come up with that roadmap. But the impact, as we see moving companies off VPN or remote PC services, is an improvement of performance of 30% or better. We definitely see a reduction in service calls and support calls with improved available reliability. It also means a scalability solution. So if you've reduced staff because of COVID-19, as things start to come back, hopefully, and you can scale up, you can do that cost effectively and as needed in a cloud solution. Certainly, we're able for most of our clients to eliminate redundant costs. There's no need to pay for a secure version of Dropbox or Box.net or other services if your people are able to use the tools that are already included in your core productivity suite, be it G Suite or Microsoft Office 365. And by working in that cloud environment, you've got better security. We can ensure that you have data protection, including making sure that all your data is backed up and recoverable, so should something go wrong, and even put in components for data loss prevention. If you're in an industry that has any sort of regulatory requirement as far as data privacy, this becomes essential and not just a nice to have. The second adaptation we made was computing resources. In the scramble to work from home, there were new devices purchased and in many cases shipped directly to the end users at their homes. We've got many companies where employees who don't normally work remotely are doing so, but they're on home computers or devices. And then we've got a whole range of new mobile users who are on the road and using their mobile devices for the first time. And this creates issues in that there is no standard image or configuration or application set anymore. If people are operating from their home computers, they might have the home version of Microsoft Office from 2013, and your company's on 2016 or 2019, and you end up with compatibility issues or file access issues and backward compatibility. You might not have, if someone's working on their home computer or the device was set up by the end user themselves, you might be missing or have some standard security and data protection, such as endpoint protection and web filtering. Home computers are accessible by others, right? So your company's data and private information about your business and your clients might be accessible by kids, employees' children or spouses, which could be a privacy issue more and is even equal or greater concern because they're accessible, could be subject to accidental deletion or damage. And really, the summary of that is you're going to end up with data outside of the company control, and that creates problems for your business internally and potentially with your customers as well. Again, the need is greater if you're any sort of information with regulation about data information, privacy, and protection. So in the solutions resource, we talk about the solutions that we've used and that we see, and sort of stepping back and taking that assessment. One is make sure you're using the licensing options. So for example, Microsoft and 365 and Office 365 licensing lets you install the downloadable apps on up to 5 computing devices and up to 5 mobile devices per person, which means you can make sure that employees who might be using their own personal computers to work from home have the same version of software that they would have if they were working in the office. Putting in mobile device management, not just for the phones and tablets, but for those laptops and computers as well, lets you segregate, control, and secure your applications and data. That protects you from the other people accessing it on that device, and make sure that you're also in any regulatory compliance you may have. You can overlay security and protections. So as a solution, for example, we partner with WebRoot. Their endpoint security solution is designed to run in a way that it doesn't interfere with whatever endpoint protection may already be installed on a PC or a Mac. In doing so, we can make sure that endpoint protection is up to your company's standards without forcing employees to remove software from their personal computers. Now, putting in mobile device management, putting in additional security protections is something, obviously, if it's on an employee's personal computer, you'll need to discuss with them. It reflects a potential change in policy, and really making sure that the employee understands how this benefits them personally, because there are personal advantages for their computer being better protected as well as the company. And doing so helps make sure you have those advanced threat protections against ransomware. In fact, we were notified by a company today looking for assistance that one of their employees' home computers got infected with ransomware, and because their environment on that computer wasn't segregated, that shifted over and infected the company's network and the company's computers. And so you want to eliminate and avoid that risk. And again, additionally, if you want to remove the risk of the local PC or device completely, that remote desktop in VDI does that, because only the screen and keyboard and mouse I/O is going up and down. All the processing is done on a desktop that's running in a secure network up in a cloud data center, along with the server, which can create some performance advantages as well. The third change or adaptation we made was around communications, and I'm using the term broadly, telephony as well as other forms of communication. For many companies, the initial response was to have people forward to their cell phone. Again, if you've got salespeople and field service people, or people who normally work part-time or full-time out of the office, they may already have had the technology and the connectivity to your phone system and your communication tools in place, so that when they're out of the office, they're still working off the company's phone system in exchange. That when someone calls them and they don't answer, it goes to the company voicemail system, things of that nature. But in the scramble, when people, in some businesses we know had less than 24 hours to close down, many employees simply forwarded their desk phone to their cell phone. We also saw a huge jump in people buying Zoom, WebEx, and GoToMeeting subscriptions for meetings, and a lot of companies jumping in and starting to pay for Slack is a social and chat-based tool. So the challenge here is because not all employees are mobile ready, and there was a shift to personal devices. When we were doing our outreach back in the March timeframe, about 40% of the companies we called, the person we reached when we dialed the general number for the company was unable to forward or redirect a call to the appropriate party, because that dial-in number, their typical phone number, had simply been forwarded to a home phone or cell and was now then in effect disconnected from the company switchboard and the company phone system. And so huge issues with voice communications, and certainly given that companies who are using Microsoft 365 or G Suite, the fact that they have chat and video conferencing capabilities built in, we're seeing a lot of companies spending significant dollars on services that are effectively redundant to things that they already have as part of their paid service suite. And then on a softer issue, we definitely saw the loss of informal conversations, that passing in the hall, the walking by the cube or the office, the hey, you got a sec type of communications. Many companies report to us that those were disappearing and migrating to email or other tools that weren't as effective. So when we talk about solutions along those lines, we found great success in as part of the step back and assessment. We encourage people to think about cloud-based voice over IP services. And this can be done, interestingly enough, some companies have chosen to replace their phone services. In many cases, in fact, in most cases that we've looked at, it's not necessary. We've been able to add on or augment what they currently have. Sometimes with the same vendor, sometimes with an additional vendor. Additionally, making sure employees understand how to use and take advantage of the integrated chat and video. And I'm not just talking in the Google environment, the chat window that shows up in your Gmail inbox. I'm actually talking about the new Google Chat and the Google Meet apps, where the Google Chat is effectively designed to serve that role of third-party tools like Slack, where you have individual chat conversations, but you can also create rooms with threads and discussions under different threads, by invitation where security is manageable. Google Meet has, the video conferencing with dial in and depending on your version, dial out recording capability. And again, depending on the version of G Suite you're running, different size meetings, anywhere from 100 up to 250 participants, and the option at certain levels of licensing to live stream as well, internally and externally. On the Microsoft side, that integrated chat and video comes through Microsoft Teams, where you've got individual and group chat, you've got dashboards, you've got channels, you've got search, you've got the social communication, you've got the ability to integrate files and even applications. It's a pretty robust environment. It's different. It's a different interface than folks are used to. A lot of folks are used to a Yammer, which is very similar to Facebook style of communications. But again, with a little education, you're using the tool that's embedded. And the impact of, add-on or replacing cloud VoIP services and using your integrated chat and video really means that communications work. Voicemails stay in the company system. You can transfer callers. Your automatic call direction or interactive voice response systems and call centers work properly. When people come in, and they're calling the helpline, the help desk works. They go to the next available agent. The after work features, they're able to transfer from one agent to another. All of that functions properly. Interestingly enough, we've seen a desire both in the education and government markets as well as the commercial market to know that when you forward your extension to your cell phone and you start returning phone calls, you're calling from your personal phone. For employees who normally aren't mobile, they're now revealing private information, and the employee's contact information is no longer private. By adding on, enhancing your voice over IP services and using the integrated chat and video services, you keep that employee contact info private. These tools also let you make sure your communications are secure. They can be informal communications such as chat, which can replace the office walk-bys, or formal. And again, it can be internal to your organization, or all of these tools work and let you share securely externally as well with customers, vendors, etc. And on top of that, we see cost savings, right? If you're not paying for Dropbox, if you're not paying for Zoom, if you're not paying for GoToMeeting or WebEx, all of which are great but somewhat pricey services at times, you're saving that money. And that's money you can better use elsewhere in your business, either as cost reduction or for other more pressing or other priorities and needs. Businesses need to share externally. Again, in the rush to go mobile, we went to sync and share services like Dropbox, Box, etc. The use of Slack. We see a lot of direct external sharing right out of file systems and some use of third-party portals. What we find is that most companies, they have a mix of business and personal grade solutions. So if your employees signed up for a personal Dropbox account using your company domain email address, that's great, but that information is not secure. It's outside of your envelope. You've lost custody of it. It's unclear whether it's backed up, and you don't have management over the privacy and security. And you need that security, permissions, and access control, particularly if you're under sort of any regulatory guidance or requirement. Additionally, moving to tools has learning curves that can impact productivity, and again, redundant services and costs. People paying for tools and capabilities that are already built within the Microsoft 365 or G Suite ecosystems. And so for solutions, we recommend that companies step back, reassess and leverage the core tools. On the Microsoft side, that might be the use of Teams, Yammer, or SharePoint sites. On the G Suite side, it could be sites and shared drives. Microsoft, you also have the Power BI component as well. If you need to, you can add tools in the Microsoft environment using Flow and Power Apps. You can actually take simple processes for customer interaction and turn them into web and mobile apps that your customers can log into. Active Directory lets you manage, outside access to those applications as well. In the G Suite environment, we see great success with a third-party tool called Overdrive, which lets you use Google Drive as a content management system for fairly sophisticated websites, including secure client and customer portals. The impact of these solutions is that it's keeping your information on your business systems. That's better information integration and how it's used. You're able to manage access, security, and permissions. You're going to reduce the learning curve and leverage it, because by learning the tools in your core systems and better utilizing them, you'll have greater productivity. You'll have less need for other learning of third-party tools down the road. And again, by eliminating third-party tools, we're going to reduce your operating costs and your IT costs. Next, I want to talk a little bit, something that's a little less technical in nature, more about the work environment. Some of the challenges we face, way back when we first started doing remote work in the late, even 1990s, and when I was in my consulting practice in the early 2000s, one of the issues that comes up is that as an employer, if you're allowing or even programmatically having people work remotely from home, you're still responsible for the quality of their work environment. So issues like ergonomics are still your responsibility and are important. In the age of remote work and video meetings, video and audio quality is critical, as is lighting, as is the privacy of your employees when they're working from home. So when we look at solutions, and some of the things that we're able to provide to our clients now as well, is looking at furniture and accessories. Do they have an appropriate desk chair? Are they at an appropriate desk? Do they have good lighting so that they have less eye strain, but also look healthy and well when they're on their video calls? Is the bandwidth that they have through their cable or broadband provider ssufficient, or should you subsidize and provide additional bandwidth for them to be able to work effectively? Are they on speakerphone, or the computer's mic and speakers, or do they have headsets or speaker mics that have a higher audio quality and noise canceling features that let them focus and improve the experience for the person on the other end of the video chat or the call? Do they have screens, so that if they're, set up in their, if their temporary home workspaces in their living room, so that when they're on a video chat, people aren't seeing into their house and into their kitchen, and maybe it needs a little straightening or a little dusting, right? Is there screens? Are you providing some standard company logoed background images to use in the chat rooms? All of those things come into play to create a healthy and vibrant work environment that can help productivity, make people, your employees, feel more comfortable as they work from home. Now there's some serious HR issues as well, particularly as we move from temporary to potentially long-term mix of on-site and remote work. Some of the challenges we face are, what are the expectations of employees as far as performance, work hours, flexibility, things of that nature? How do we deal with formal and informal absences, right? So formal, people still have vacation time. They still might get sick. But then again, their kids could be home doing school remotely, and they might get interrupted to help their child with a technical issue or a homework issue, or need to communicate with a teacher or guidance counselor, which leads to issues of hours and time management. And this is a particular issue for employees who are paid hourly, and create legal issues for companies that don't pay attention. And obviously, working remote, in the early phases, we hear about how much more productive people can be. There are also still issues with the feelings of isolation, so social emotional wellness. And so when we look at solutions there, we advise companies to update their policies covering all of these things. Make sure that expectations are clear and people understand how and when they're supposed to tap into their personal time or sick time or vacation time. What's your policy about interruptions or work schedule related to possibly having childcare or family care issues in the home, whether they're working on site now or remotely? For hourly employees, there may be a need to manage scheduling and even restrict when they can access systems, knowing that if you have an hourly employee who's working remotely and they put in their full 8-hour day from 8 to 5 with their hour, their half hour for lunch and their 2 15-minute breaks, that's great. But if you send them an email at 7:30 at night and they happen to check it and respond, they're working again. They're supposed to clock that time and you're supposed to pay them for that time. And, this is something that we're starting to see being enforced a little bit, and an increasing issue for businesses with hourly staff working from home. How are you managing the scheduling? Do you need to restrict hourly employees from working after hours without authorization for additional time or overtime? When it comes to social and emotional wellness, social activities for on-site and remote staff, the type of things that you might do for folks in the office are things you might want to do for people working remotely. So, if your office is one where when someone has a birthday, you bring in a cake and everyone gathers, that's great. You have someone having a birthday, send the cupcakes to the house, and maybe with their teammates, and schedule a time for everyone to be on to sit and chat and eat cupcakes or things of that nature. Even having meetings where there isn't a business topic, but it's a check-in, a well-being check, one-on-one, small groups, large groups, so that remote staff feel connected with those working on site on those days, and that there's seen as remote and on-site equity. And that all comes into play so that folks working remotely don't start feeling left out or left behind for the activities of the company. And they feel that their work environment is similar whether they're working from home or they're in the office. And so pulling this all together, the target is really, seamless hybrid, right? Some people might be working on site, some might be home. It shouldn't matter where they're working, right? The work life should be consistent. Are my workflows the same? How I engage with fellow employees, with my supervisor, with subordinates, with customers, how are those interactions consistent whether I'm on site or working from home? Am I socialized within the company? Are those expectations similar, and is there trust? We've gotten lots of pitches from companies offering, telling us we should be selling services that monitor the work that people do, so we know if they're working remote, they put a full day's work in. I look at it differently. One, if I've got someone working from home and I don't trust that they're going to put in a full day or put in a full effort, then why are they working for me to begin with, right? I should trust my employees. And secondly, if I put that system in, are my employees going to start think that I assume they're not trustworthy? And how does that damage, their view of me as a manager, me as an owner, and us as a company, and how we interact and what our culture is? So trust is important in the way we work, even more so than ever. Additionally, part of seamless hybrid is the one way to work, right? How you access and use your applications and your systems, how you access files, how you share information and ideas, how you communicate should be consistent, whether you're in the office or remotely. And making it as consistent as possible eases the stress, right? And reduces the anxiety and improves productivity and improves morale. And that makes your business more effective and better able to survive and thrive. So what's the action, right? So clearly at the beginning, we talked about stepping back and taking that assessment, right? Starting with those desired business outcomes and results, understanding the changes and the impacts in your needs and priorities, right? From there, we can act. We can plan strategy. We can identify tactics, long-term, short-term, mid-term, and we can look at the value proposition. Is there savings involved? Is there a cost involved? What's the cost if we do nothing, short-term and long-term? And finally, you execute, right? You take your strategy, you take your tactical projects, you manage the change, you manage those projects, you manage your operations, you move forward, and you start the cycle over again. It's really not different for any project or any initiative or any stage of your business, just maybe with a slightly higher sense of urgency and a little more specificity as some of the driving factors that come into play. And so how can we help? We have a couple of service options for you. And again, this isn't just limited to, well, we're technology centric. We're not technology exclusive when we talk about these service options. So we have two right now. One is a service we're offering for free and without any further obligation. It's our response and recovery assessment. It's a general review to help understand where you're at, what your direction is, and what action steps you might want to take towards the current and changing quote unquote normal, right? You go to our homepage. There's a simple form you use to request it. And your commitment is really only about 30 minutes we're going to spend on the phone. We're going to ask you some questions. We're going to talk through. We're going to listen, and we're going to make some high-level suggestions. At that point, if what we've said is interesting, you want to dive deeper, we can always do that. Hopefully, you'll leave that conversation with 2 or 3 ideas you can execute, and it'll have a positive impact. And then down the road, if we can help you, we hope that you come back and talk to us about that type of help and how we might be part of the solution. But if you want to dive in a little deeper, be a little more strategic, we offer a service. This is a fee-based service called Recovery Roadmap. It's an overview. It's a detailed analysis of where you are with respect to your business and technology. From that analysis, we do some strategic planning with you and identify specific tactical projects for you to consider. There's a request form on our website. You can link to it here from the presentation. We'll put a link in the YouTube description as well. For both of these, your commitment is significantly different here. It's really about 3 to 4 hours, a half day of your time. We'll have a kickoff meeting to go over the process and the type of issues we're discussing. There's a questionnaire. This is not a little marketing questionnaire. This will take, we say 45 to 60 minutes. Most companies tell us it takes an hour to an hour and a half to complete. We're going to get that information. We may have follow-up questions. We'll send you by email or get on the phone real quick to go through. We'll take that data. We'll do an analysis assessment. We'll come back with a set of recommendations, and then we'll connect with you for a roadmap meeting where we'll walk through our analysis and our recommendations, give you a chance to digest it, ask questions, and decide how you might want to proceed. And again, that is a more detailed, it's an in-depth survey. So if you're interested in either one of those, you can contact us here at info@cumulusglobal.com. If you have any questions or comments regarding the topics we've covered here tonight, you can contact us. You can also contact me directly. My email address and my direct phone line are on the slide. I will tell you that I'm much better at responding to emails than I am voicemail messages. And so given my schedule, email is definitely the best way to reach me, afalcon@cumulusglobal.com. So at this point, I'm going to open it up for questions. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to open that questions window and type away. I'll address them as they come in. It's also the point in time where I halt the recording of the session. So for those of you who've watched this recording on demand, thank you for your time and attention. Please let us know if we can be of help in any way, shape, or form. Appreciate you taking the time to watch the video and hope to hear from you soon. And hopefully this was helpful to you as well. Thank you very much.